Right, welcome everybody. Sorry for the little delay there, a few little technical glitches. Thanks for joining us. Good evening if you're in Asia, good afternoon if you're in India, and good morning if you're joining us from Europe. Or I think we've got some people joining us from South Africa by the sign of it as well. So welcome. This is the second time we did this webinar. We did this webinar in February, and we had a good response. So we decided that we would do it again, do it at a more Europe-friendly time. So today we're going to be talking again about destination recovery, how to promote your destination when no one's traveling. So let's just introduce ourselves. My name is Tim Russell. I'm Commercial Director for Southeast Asia for eRoam. We're a travel technology company, and I'll tell you just a little bit about us towards the end of the webinar. I also look after all the company's digital marketing, and I'm based in Bangkok. And joining me, I think, from Chiang Mai is Jens. Welcome, Jens.
Hello, Tim. Yes, normally in Bangkok, but today this week we're in Chiang Mai, meeting with some of our experienced Mekong Collection members. So I am traveling, but only domestically during this time. But yet, I mean, I think we're lucky to be in Thailand because we can actually travel domestically. And we're staying at the beautiful Anantara Resort here in Chiang Mai. So it's not too bad. And we've been seeing some very interesting and innovative small businesses here.
Good. Yes, I got on a plane for the first time in a year last month as well. So that's the good thing about being in Thailand, is that we can still fly around domestically and visit lots of amazing places. Okay,
so yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jens.
Yeah, I was just gonna quickly mention. So I mean, I'm looking after the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office for any of you that doesn't know the office. So we are a regional tourism collaboration body of the 6 governments of the Greater Mekong sub-region, including Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, and China. And I'm doing this job for another couple months, and have been doing it for 7 years. So we also have created a private sector arm, which is called Destinationmekong, where we're running quite a few initiatives. One that I just mentioned, our Experienced Mekong Collection, which has over 300 small, responsible travel businesses and social enterprises. We also have our social media campaigns, Mekong Moments and Mekong Minis, and various other initiatives as well, like MIST, which is our Sustainable Innovation Program as well. So, I'm also here with my colleague Ton, who is our operations managers, who are both in Chiang Mai. So yeah, so we can either find out more information at destinationmekong.com or mekongtourism.org.
Thanks, Jens. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. We're probably going to take around, I think last time we took about 40 minutes, and then we had a Q&A. We'll try and stick to the same time this time. We are going to start off by talking about a few stats on how COVID has affected the travel industry in Asia and beyond. I think you all know what those stats are anyway, but we're just going to underline them a little bit. We're also going to talk about when travel will recover in 2021, if it's going to recover, and some thoughts on outlook for the year ahead, and to see if there are any reasons to be optimistic. The main meat of the webinar today is talking about some ideas and examples of ways that you can promote your destination now to start preparing for the eventual recovery. And then finally, we've got a Q&A. And if you look on your Zoom screen, you'll see a little button called Q&A. If you click on that and type, then you can type us a question at any time. We'll either answer it during the webinar, or we'll wait to the end, but we will answer any questions that you have at an appropriate time. If at any point you stop hearing me, or there's something wrong with the screen, or any technical problem, then just please shout up in the chat window and let us know. I'm working from home and I've got 3 dogs here. So if you suddenly hear lots of noise and barking in the background, it's my dogs going crazy about something. So don't be alarmed. Right, let's get started. And first of all, let's have a look at some stats. Again, I think we don't really need to share these stats with you. You all know that last year was a disastrous year for tourism. These stats are from Per Anderson, who are a travel industry consultancy based in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. And you can see right across the board, international tourism arrivals are way down. Indonesia's down 75% year on year, Vietnam down nearly 79%, Thailand 83%, and Philippines and Singapore about the same. And those those figures are probably because the pandemic didn't really start to hit until March 2020. So most countries had a couple of good months in January and February, and then it all sort of went pear-shaped from March onwards. And this is the effect that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on jobs in tourism. Estimated that probably 100 million jobs in tourism and associated businesses that depend on tourism, that supply the tourism industry, have been lost, with the vast majority of those in Asia Pacific. I know there's a lot of shuttered businesses here in Bangkok and in Phuket, and I assume it's the same in Chiang Mai at the moment, Jens.
Yeah, I think Chiang Mai is hit pretty hard, and so we've seen with our small businesses that quite a few have now shut, not just temporarily but also permanently. So I think it obviously gets harder and harder to survive this pandemic. Everyone is waiting for the vaccine to provide a solution, so we'll see if that happens. But I think at this point right now, a full recovery of tourism is still, I think, a long ways out.
Yeah, I was in Koh Lipe in Thailand last month, and I would say probably 20% of bars and restaurants and shops catering to tourists there were shut, some permanently, some temporarily. So it was pretty sad. This is an impact summary from last month, again from our friends at Per Anderson, on the current state of the industry here in Southeast Asia. So you'll see most countries are on partial lockdown. All countries still have inbound travel restrictions. Thailand still has quarantine, and most companies still have outbound travel restrictions as well. You can see, as far as our region is concerned, I mean, in many countries we've done very well in the pandemic. Cambodia, I think Cambodia's now had 5 deaths actually, but Laos has had none. Vietnam's only had 35. Thailand's only had 79. I think that's 84. So the area has done very well in managing the pandemic, but we're now waiting for the rest of the world to get into gear and hopefully start sending us tourists. Now, look, Jens said he thinks it'll be a while before tourism recovers. Here's some predictions from McKinsey. They think domestic tourism will recover 1 or 2 years earlier than outbound travel. They think domestic travel will get back to 2019 levels sometime in 2022, but outbound is probably not going to fully recover until sort of 2024, maybe beyond that. Would you agree with that, Jens? You're starting to see a pickup in domestic tourism here already?
Yeah, I mean, I think domestic tourism has been, kind of at least in Thailand and other countries in Southeast Asia, but obviously it doesn't compensate for the loss of international tourists. So I think that's, and then if you look at some pockets, obviously, that are more frequented by international tourists, the dip is very dramatic, where there are also areas that are not that impacted. So it's not, you can't really say it's across the board, it's bad. So I mean, there are some areas that are really hit hard, and then there are other ones that are actually doing okay. So it always depends. But I think in general, generally speaking, I think it's going to take a while to go back to levels that we've seen before COVID, if ever.
Yeah, and also domestic tourists generally spend a lot less than international tourists as well. So even if domestic tourism numbers pick up, it's not necessarily going to mean a a lot of revenue coming into the industry. Look at our revaccination timeline here in Asia. Thailand, these figures are based on when they think over 60% of the population will have already been vaccinated. So with Southeast Asia, we're probably looking at by the end of 2022. We know in Europe and the US, vaccine rollouts have begun already, and everyone's waiting to see how effective that is. We're finding, as a technology company, we're finding that the industry is starting to get a lot more optimistic. We're starting to get a lot more inquiries and sign up a lot of customers now, and the industry seems to be slowly starting to crank back into life with the optimism created by the vaccination. Are you finding that as well, Jens? You finding that people you talk to are starting to get a little bit more optimistic than they were last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to have some kind of hope or light at the end of the tunnel, and I think vaccines are the only thing that we kind of can put our power bet on right now. But I think the other thing that we're seeing now developing is what is being called vaccine diplomacy, if you want to actually call it diplomacy. But where countries like China say, okay, well, you know, if you get vaccinated with a vaccine from China, you can enter, but maybe a vaccine from Europe doesn't get you in. So I think we have to see how that picks up. I think that could actually be quite dramatic from a political or geopolitical standpoint. And on the other hand, we also have learned that not every vaccine is actually the same. So I think that's another thing that obviously, I mean, there's some trust issues in terms of which vaccine is better and which one you know, is more reliable, or which vaccines even could harm people. There's also the whole issue in terms of that people that are under the age of 16 are not getting vaccinated. So what does that mean in terms of the whole tourism landscape? Because if there's obviously a family of 4 with 2 kids under the age of 16, now how are they going to travel? You know, so I think you know, when we dig deeper in the whole vaccine piece, I think it gets more and more complicated.
Yes, it's not going to be an instant silver bullet to restart tourism, is it?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so those are a few, just a quick look at how the pandemic has affected tourism, and a few sort of green shoots of optimism for this year. What we're going to talk about now is some destination marketing tips. So at the moment, obviously, you're not getting any foreign tourists to your destination, wherever you are in the world. We're going to look at a few creative ideas and ways you can still keep your destination top of mind in people's minds for when they do start traveling. And that brings us to the first one, which is staying top of mind, is keeping your destination in heads of your target market, making sure they don't forget about you, so that when tourism restarts, they straight away they want to come to your destination. So it's basically maintaining demand during this downtime. So basically, it involves being creative and original, coming up with some striking campaigns and the kind of quirky, weird campaigns that go viral. And Jens has got a couple of really good examples here that he wants to share with us.
Yes, so our Trends travel platform, we've done some research there, and obviously there's quite a few innovations that we've seen, but I think one that was quite interesting was from Switzerland. Matt, and I'm sure many of you know, the Matterhorn has kind of shown some kind of what they call a COVID-19 solidarity, where they displayed the flags on this iconic mountain, and then they've used that before. I mean, even Swatch has used this tactic before for campaigns and for events, but I think that obviously kind of got a lot of press. And I think the learning out of that is, I mean, there's a lot of iconic icons, I would say.
Iconic icons, I like that.
Iconic icons all over the world. And so they could be leveraged for similar things, and that obviously kind of keeps the destination top of mind in a positive way. Another one, highly innovative, and Iceland is known for some very almost crazy campaigns is what they've done with what they call to let it out. So where obviously people couldn't travel, and you could record your scream, uh, um, and then they would kind of display that scream somewhere in Iceland. And the idea is that, well, Iceland that doesn't have a lot of people. It's a beautiful nature and a vast land, and so they have these on the right hand side. You can see these big speakers, and then also they when they actually then do that, they also kind of talk about the destination and where this happened. So I think a very smart campaign to keep top of mind, keep the destination top of mind, and linking it to this current situation.
Yeah. Which brings us on, I think, a little bit to number two. In fact, using COVID itself as a marketing tool. A lot of we've seen a lot of marketing that kind of pretends that COVID doesn't exist, and we can see some people trying to promote their trips and destinations as normal, but that's not going to work. So I think you've got to include COVID in your marketing messages and in your promotional messages, and rather than pretend that it doesn't exist and treat it like an elephant in the room, you've really got to accept that it's there and use it to promote your destination. So that involves things like stressing your destination's safety, which is something that I know Southeast Asian destinations are going to be doing. Places like Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand that have really controlled the virus are able to do that. Promote vaccination or testing trips. I know there are the phrase, I think, Revaccination, is that right? Have you heard this phrase, Jens? Vaccinations?
I have. I think it's a little bit
of a clumsy term, but I know some people are doing domestic, some countries are done domestic vaccination trips. And also quarantines. We're going to look at some interesting quarantine ideas that are happening in, I know one of them is happening in Thailand as well, things like beach resort quarantines. And of course, if you're promoting your destination domestically, one of the big selling points at the moment is that there's no mass tourism. Here in Southeast Asia, for example, now is the best time to visit Angkor Wat in Cambodia for years. There are no tour groups there. It's pretty much deserted. It's the same with a lot of beaches in Thailand as well. The beaches that are normally busy during this time of year are very, very quiet. And also flights and hotels are cheaper than they've been in years as well. So flying domestically and staying domestically, doing staycations is really, really cheap at the moment because of the lower prices. So that's another good thing to talk about. This is one. This is from the Philippines. Stay at this hotel and they'll actually give you a free COVID test. So they're actually selling COVID test vacations, which is one example. Creative ideas. As we mentioned before, promoting domestic destinations free of mass tourism. This is Angkor Wat at the moment, and when I've been to Angkor Wat, it's never looked like that. It's always been a lot busier than that. So we're finding that certainly in Thailand, domestic tourists are starting to rediscover their own country and visit places that they may have been discouraged from visiting over the last few years because they were crowded. Jens has got some good examples here, including this one from Wales.
Yeah, I think I lost the internet there for a second, but maybe.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
As it relates to the communications side, I think this is actually going to be a critical piece, and we're actually right now working with the Asian Development Bank to create a regional tourism communications plan. This is actually quite unique. I think we're the first regional tourism collaboration that is doing something like that. But the reason why we feel that's important is because in the end, it all comes down to confidence and trust. I think, as you mentioned, Tim, even if you're doing some great things, people may not feel confident. So it's how it's being communicated, which channels. Also, there are different segments that react to recovery differently. If you kind of segment backpackers versus baby boomers, and they need different messages. So one message doesn't fit all. So we're working on that and looking to kind of leverage then the initiatives and the recovery strategies that have been developed by our member countries. So I think this is actually a very relevant and exciting project. Now, talking about this example on the screen, Wales, obviously, when we then look at data, Wales has done something interesting. Obviously, I mean, even with Mekong Tourism and a lot of other destinations, they kind of provide information what is happening in the destination, what's the status in terms of border openings and health measurements. But Wales actually, they've gone out and they're looking at sentiment analysis, and they're looking at what are people talking about the destination on social media during this pandemic. Where are the concerns? And I think that's very powerful, even linking it back to, what I just talked about, a communications plan, because in the end, that gives you insights and how do you communicate? What are the issues that people are having that maybe are looking to travel to your destination? How you may want to reshape your products and your experiences so it matches better in terms of what people are looking for. So Wales, I think, is a it's not the only destination that does it, but it's I think a best practice in terms of how they've executed that.
Yeah, sure. And this is the one we mentioned before. This some of the creative quarantine ideas that we've had, rather than just sitting in a hotel room for 2 weeks. I know a lot of places in Thailand and beyond have come up with ideas like this.
Yeah, so I think there are actually a lot of people or countries looking at Thailand for some creative ideas. So this is the golf quarantine. There's also a yacht quarantine. There's a villa quarantine. So it's all the same concept to have people travel to a destination and instead of just being locked in a hotel room and really kind of like wasting their time and having bad food and really waiting to get out of
bad food in Thailand.
well, bad food in some of the hotels that are quarantined, which
Yeah,
is
I've
because
heard a
all
few
wrapped in
horror stories
plastic,
actually.
and you feel like it's worse than airport food. So you need to kind of get through these 2 weeks. So I think so they TAT came up with some ideas where actually people can still enjoy their holidays, but it's in quarantine. So if you play golf, obviously you're somewhat a social distance. If you're on a yacht, you're somewhat social distance. So I think that's quite innovative, and this is obviously something that a lot of destinations could do.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And then we've got a couple of other ones. These went viral a few weeks ago, didn't they? The Uzbekistan COVID guarantee, for example.
Yeah, I think this is already almost, I think, half a year or even longer. But Uzbekistan, somewhat a bold move, saying like, well, if you get sick, you get 3,000 US dollars. Emirates Airlines did something interesting in providing insurance and cover people if they get sick. So it comes all back to this assurance. What happens if I go somewhere? And there's a survey being done with Chinese tourists that Chinese tourists will be more comfortable in traveling to destinations that have a solid health infrastructure. So if there is a country that may not be as reputable in terms of hospitals and providing care, in this survey, Chinese tourists might not be as comfortable in going there. So I think providing assurance that in the case, even if that might be rather slim, if something happens, you're still taken care of. That's going to be important.
Yeah, cool. And we had a couple of ideas here taking in the concept of social distancing. We mentioned that golf was the perfect sport for social distancing. We've also got this great idea here from Australia with a floating cinema with social distancing boats, so you can float out on the water on a boat watching a film. And I like this one that you shared here as well, Jens, with this restaurant in Amsterdam doing these individual little greenhouses.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few some innovative ideas of businesses that are, again, trying to make people feel safe, but still bringing them out to have an experience, and then obviously trying to survive their business. So I think there's a sky the limit in terms of how creative you can be. But I guess businesses that are not creative and just waiting for magic to happen may just go out of business.
Yeah, exactly. And we're seeing a real a real sort of outburst of creativity in many countries these days when it comes to ideas. It's given I think a lot of countries both the impetus to be more creative, and it's given them the time to be more creative as well. So and I think, like you said, it's the companies that have got this creativity that are the ones who are probably going to come out of the pandemic healthier, maybe still alive. We mentioned before about promoting to locals, and we're starting to see companies that are normally handling inbound travel having to pivot a little bit and start to come up with ideas for domestic travelers, which is a bit of a challenge because it's a totally different market. It's a totally different demographic. In some ways, it's a different product as well. So as we said before, most countries have seen a boom in domestic travel as travelers rediscover their own countries without mass tourists. And also outbound tourists who would normally holiday overseas are having to holiday domestically. So you're having to, that involves a different kind of travel because those people maybe have more money to spend. So you're starting to see a growth in sort of luxury experiential domestic tourism that maybe wasn't there before as well. And I think offering new insights to people, giving people a fresh look at places they think they know, or promoting unique or little known destinations, like we're starting to see real growth here in Thailand in things like farm stays. Thais are actually getting back to nature and staying on farms, which maybe 3 or 4 years ago they wouldn't have considered doing. And I think a lot more companies now are pushing staycations, so selling escapes in your own city. So not just selling a hotel, but selling things like a limousine transfer to the hotel, gym access, pool access, spa, breakfast, dinner, and even some tours included in that as well, because hotels are offering super cheap staycation rates at the moment. And we have some good examples of that. Here are some examples from Singapore and Malaysia. Singapore has to be even more creative than other destinations because it's such a small place. It's really just a city. So they don't even have much of a domestic tourism market, because if you live in a city in Singapore, there isn't really anywhere else to go. So staycations are really important with them. Here's a hotel in Singapore that's doing a staycation, including things like Victoria Concert Hall, Clock Tower climb, and things like that. So enabling people to see their city from a different perspective. Couple of good ideas here as well. I like the idea on the left here from Malaysia, where they're doing an airport staycation and allowing you to be an airside firefighter for the day. So you can tour the airport fire station and you can meet the airport firefighters, and kids or even adults can play at being a firefighter for a day. So that's again a really original, creative idea that gives people the opportunity to see a different side of their own destinations that they might not otherwise have considered. Here's one that Thailand was doing last year. Thailand was not just expats, but also residents. It was giving them a discount at 300 participating hotels around the country. I know quite a lot of people put that offer up. And Jens, here's one you shared from Laos.
Yeah, I think very similar concept where obviously destinations now see that the importance of their own residents. And before we've always seen this concept, you need to bring residents into the equation when you kind of look at destination management and really creating resilience. So I think now this concept has really hit home because now these residents are the ones that can drive the loss of business in some kind of way or form. So I think a lot of destinations and cities all around the world have done that, and always kind of with the focus on supporting local businesses and small businesses, indigenous businesses, and so on. So I think it's great, and I think this is also a trend that hopefully will stay on when borders reopen again, to incorporate residents into the equation and bring them into the conversation, because we obviously still remember these pictures of over tourism where obviously residents weren't incorporated in the conversation, and then many pushed back, as we've seen. Remember these pictures from Barcelona and from Venice and Kyoto and other places all over the world, So I think this also from a sustainability standpoint is an important lesson. And then number two, staying on the concept of sustainability, obviously, as everyone is talking about climate change and kind of reducing the footprint and carbon emissions. Obviously, if we do travel more local and closer to home, that also creates a positive impact when it comes to all these issues, and you're buying more local products and so on. So I think obviously still there are issues, just the domestic tourists or the local tourists cannot compensate for that, but it also gives us the opportunity to learn more about our destinations. Myself, living in Bangkok, and I've gone to staycations in places around the city where I don't live and had a great experience, which otherwise I probably wouldn't have done.
Yeah, same. Same for me. Same for me. And another one that we're going to look at is virtual tours. We can't physically travel to places, but the technology is there now for us to pay virtual visits to the place, whether it's the simple thing about video, or whether it's 360-degree technology. Now is actually a great time to go and do photography and video of your key destinations, because you're going to be able to shoot them without mass tourism. I know a few companies in Cambodia at the moment are doing videos of Angkor Wat because it's completely empty. So now is a really good time to work on your destination marketing in terms of imagery, because your pictures aren't going to be full of tourists. And obviously 360 technology is there now so that you can create more interactive visitor experiences, similar to Google Street View, where you can go for a virtual walk around various destinations and tourist attractions. Now, here's one. I don't know how, those of you who are joining us from Europe or Africa, I don't know how popular Pokemon Go was in your destinations, but here in Southeast Asia, certainly here in Asia, certainly a couple of years ago, it was massively popular, and it still is. You still see a lot of people playing Pokemon Go when they're on the train and walking around shopping malls. And Jens, this is one that Singapore Tourism Board came up with.
Yeah, no, I think it's nice to kind of build in some gamification into that to motivate people to discover local secrets and hidden gems. So I think that's one. There's other destinations that do similar things, but I think that's great. I also just going back to your point earlier in terms of imagery. I know you, Tim. You're going out there sometimes because you're a photographer yourself, and you're going into neighborhoods in Bangkok, and now it's a great time for you to capture some great experiences and imagery as well, no?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of photography in Chinatown, and normally I go out to Chinatown and it's full of tourists, and now there's no tourists there. So it's a fantastic time to go out and take pictures. And here's some other good ideas. There was Faroe Islands remote tourism, where you can basically visit the Faroe Islands through the eyes, ears, and body of a local person. So take a local person and tell them to move forward, tell them to jump, tell them to turn left. Again, which, like Jens said, is gamification of the virtual travel experience. And this was quite a quirky one as well. Jens, tell us about virtual rent-a-fin. Sounds like fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think Finland has a few years ago launched this campaign, the Rent-a-Fin, and as you know, now I think for the third or fourth year, Finland has been ranked as the world happiest country in the world. So the idea is really that you connect with a Finn and you kind of find out why they're the happiest people in the world. But now, obviously, that no one can travel, they kind of brought this and made this campaign virtual. I think what's interesting about that is it's not just that, they're leveraging their DNA and their positioning in terms of world happiness, but they took an existing campaign that was extremely successful and now continued that, but made it virtual for this time. So I think sometimes you don't have to always create a totally new campaign, but you can maybe leverage a successful campaign and see how that might be able to be adopted, for this current situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. And then I think this is the last area is sustainability. We talk a lot about sustainability in travel. Sadly, a lot of it is often just talk, but I think now with the pandemic, we've seen what the world is like without mass tourism. We've seen what our own destinations are like without mass tourism. For example, there was in India, for example, people who live near the Himalayas were able to see the mountains for the first time from their city last year because the smog had dissipated, and they were able to actually see what their countryside looks like without commuters and mass tourism. So I think sustainability will be a major concern and a booking driver when travel recovers. And I think local initiatives are important in that as well. As Jens mentioned at the start of the talk, small businesses here in many countries, particularly countries that are very dependent on tourism, are suffering really badly. As I said, Koh Lipe in Thailand, well, I estimated about 20% of businesses were closed down. It's the same in tourism areas in Bangkok. And I'm sure those of you who are listening in from cities that have a lot of tourism are probably seeing a similar scenario with businesses either mothballed or permanently shuttered. So I think what we're going to see is destinations promoting initiatives to support small businesses in the destination. And we're going to look at a few of these now as well. Jens, you've got a couple of good examples here from Vanuatu in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I think starting with Canada, obviously, this is something we touched on already, to support local businesses. And I think a lot of destinations have done that. And it's obviously critical because these local small businesses, they need the help now. But many times when you live in a city, you're not even aware of these great experiences that you have. So I think that's a great way. And then Vanuatu as a destination, they've aligned their entire strategy to the GSTC, the Global Sustainable Tourism Council criteria. And I think that's important. So really looking to preserve and protect the destination. So they kind of went in there and said like, well, you know what, right now no one can come visit us because of COVID-19. So we're now making sure that we're protecting and preserving it. So when you come, you can then experience this very pure destination. So I think the positioning, I think, is very relevant, especially for this destination.
Yeah. Agreed. So sorry, let me just go back to the and the Vanuatu one. We did mention how Vanuatu is promoting sustainability. Jens, you still there?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I think Vanuatu has developed a whole strategy around it, which is all driven, by these sustainable tourism criteria, and really looking to also engage the entire the residents that they have in making sure that the destination is protected, the wildlife, the environment, and so on.
Yeah, I think, like you said, engaging residents is very important. I know we've seen a push. I was in Naples a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of anti-Airbnb graffiti around the Spanish Quarter in Naples, for example. And I think there's been a bit of a pushback, like you said, in places like Barcelona and Venice. I think moving forward, I think destinations will need to think a little bit more about the relationship between mass tourism and their local residents.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've had to quickly rush through some ideas there. I hope those ideas that we've shared have given you a little bit of inspiration if you're a DMC or a tour operator about trying to keep your destination top of mind and promoting your destination at this difficult time, and also promoting to domestic tourism. Before we finish, I just want to tell you a little bit about our company, about eRoam. Rather than me talk about eRoam, I'm just going to share you a very short video, which I think pretty much encapsulates what eRoam is all about.
Meet Jack and Jill. They have an appointment to visit their travel advisor today. They plan to book their round-the-world dream holiday. Jack explains his priorities are snorkeling and diving in Africa, Australia, and Thailand. Jill's priorities are visiting the hill tribes, shopping on Rodeo Drive, and taking the train across the Rocky Mountains. The advisor prepares and shows the proposed itinerary to Jack and Jill, which they agree to buy and get handed their tickets. Now, Jack and Jill are ready to go on their holiday. They can go to the airport and all the work is done. Right? Wrong. Let's take a look behind the scenes at what really happens and all the travel professionals involved in making a booking like this. First, the travel advisor conducts a consultation with the clients on where they want to travel and their requirements. From this information, the advisor checks availability and creates an itinerary with flights, hotels, and activities. This can take hours as they review from the millions of hotels, motels, guest houses, and hostels that are showing in the marketplace, and then working out what is best suited to Jack and Jill. With eRoam, the travel advisor can find, in minutes, curated content displaying the best hotels for your clients. Next, the advisor looks at the availability of over 1,000 airline, train, and bus operators to see which offer the best deal based on Jack and Jill's requirements. Finally, the advisor needs to add from the curated content the best tour operators, DMCs, and wholesalers, like snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef, cruising down the Mekong River to Luang Prabang, or a first-class suite on the famous Rocky Mountaineer train. This can take suppliers several hours, and in most cases, days, to respond to the advisor. With eRoam, this can be done in minutes. Once the advisor has all this information, they can then create a quote and proposed itinerary. This step normally takes a further 2 or more hours, but eRoam does this instantly. The eRoam Travel Operations Project is a partnership of eRoam Technologies and Travel Operations, powered by Microsoft Dynamics. If you would like to learn more, please...
Okay, so that's just a very quick introduction to our travel technology product, which is aimed mainly at DMCs, tour operators, and travel agents. If you want to find out more, then please visit eroam.com and we can set you with a free trial. No problem. Jens, do you want to? I mean, you've told us a little bit about Mekong Tourism already. Have you got anything more to share with us on your organization?
No, I mean, I think the only thing that might be relevant, interesting for people is that we actually have also started a program with Mekong Institute where we actually curate different innovations during the pandemic. So if you go to, let's say, Destinationmekong.com, and then under initiatives or projects, I forgot, then you can see actually some of these inspiring innovations in the Mekong region. So there's some really nice stuff out there. And we currently also have our MISS program open, that is Mekong Innovations in Sustainable Tourism. So there anyone can nominate for free any initiatives from existing ventures to ideas and concepts, from startups to corporates to students and individuals. So I think this is also happening, which is quite interesting as well. We're then guided by this Mekong Tourism Advisory Group, where we have now over 120 people on it, and they help us with the various initiatives that we're executing.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Jens. And if anyone listening out there is overseas and is an outbound tour operator or a travel agent who sends tourists to Southeast Asia, then the Mekong Tourism Organization is a great source of information on that as well. Does anybody have any questions for us? I see nobody's typed any questions in the question window yet. If anybody has any questions, please, you can type in the Q&A window or in the chat window. If you have any questions about eRoam, you can visit our website, eroam.com. I think, Jens, your website is mekongtourism.org. Am I correct?
Yes, or for the initiative, Destinationmekong.com. I think Mr. Ton has added the links into the chat box there. So yeah.
Yes, and I will just put the eRoam website link in there as well. So if you want to find out more about eRoam and what we do, or get in touch with me, then you can visit eroam.com. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us. We've taken a little bit longer than we planned to, but we still haven't kept you longer than an hour. One more thing before we leave you is we have another webinar coming up in April. This time we're going to be approaching sort of COVID-19 recovery more from an HR point of view and a people management point of view. And we're going to be talking about how travel companies can prepare their teams for operation restart. So getting your HR plan into place, maybe building up your teams. You may have let a lot of people go or furloughed a lot of people, getting people back to work, managing people who are going to be working from home, and also getting your technology in place for recovery as well. So if those topics are of interest to you, please join up. That will be Thursday, 22nd of April. And you can find information about that and register erome.com. So thank you very much to Jens for joining us, for all your input.
Thank you, Tim. It was a pleasure.
No problem. Hopefully, I know you're only with the Mekong Tourism organization for a couple of months, so we wish you luck in your last 2 months and whatever you do after that. I know you're still going to be working with Destination Mekong, I think, as well. Hopefully, you'll be joining us for another webinar at some point in the next few months. Be delighted if you would.
Anytime, just let me know.
Excellent. And thanks everybody for listening, and hopefully you'll join us for our next webinar. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.